That's the good news. If life couldn't be easier, I don't know what we're talking about here. So, I mean, I've been looking my whole life for how to make my life easier. So it's been a long journey, and very fortunate that there have been wonderful insights along the way that have helped make life easier.
Yeah. So how did you come to be where you are now?
Well, when I was 22 years old, which was several lifetimes ago, I started teaching high school, and I was teaching 16, 17-year-old kids, and I looked younger than they did. And I remember what it was like for me in high school. It was not always easy. And what made it not easy wasn't so much the schoolwork as how insecure I was. I mean, it wasn't until I met my wife my sophomore year in college that I found a girl or a woman that I could speak to comfortably. And I was very shy. A lot of my friends find that hard to believe, but I was very shy and quite insecure, except when I did sports. And when I did sports, I had so much fun, and I did well, and I was comfortable. And it seemed like on the sports field or court, life was easy. But boy, it didn't seem that way for the rest of my life. And because I was so young, I had a lot of kids coming up to ask me about their problems, talk to me about their problems. And pretty soon I had lots and lots and lots of kids coming and confiding in me. So I became very, very interested in what can I teach people that will help them have an easier time in life. And it became my passion. I mean, I not only wanted to find it out for myself, but I genuinely wanted to find out what I could share with other people, whether it was friends or my kids, other people that would talk to me. And I just thought it would be really great if I could find something that would help anybody's life get easier. So that was my search, and it went on for many years. And eventually, after 6 years of teaching high school, which I loved, I decided to get my doctorate in psychology so that I could further pursue how to help people have an easier time of life. And so I became licensed as a psychologist after I finished school, and had been working for 10 years as a psychologist before I found what I thought really would make life easier for anybody. So that's my story.
And how did you find that?
Well, I was a searcher, so I read voraciously. I read several books a week, all of which claim to have the secret to life and how to make life easier. And I would try out their techniques. And one day I was in the bookstore yet again, buying several books. And one of the books was, the subtitle for the book was A Groundbreaking New Approach to Happiness. Now, I was very jaded at that time, and I had come across about 1,000 groundbreaking new approaches to happiness that seemed to offer a technique that would help me feel better for a little bit, but then I'd be right back caught up in my own insecure thinking. It's not to say they didn't help a little bit, they did. And but I was committed to working on myself. So it got to be probably 4 hours a day I was working on myself, trying to improve my well-being. And so then I found this book and I read it, and it touched off something very deep in me, and it didn't offer a single technique. It just says we're all suffering because we have, for centuries, had a misunderstanding about where psychological experience comes from. And got my attention. It was basically saying we're all thinkers. We're born thinkers. We think from the moment we're born until we die. And that very few people understand that whatever we think, we're going to experience or feel. Now, I had been a psychologist for 10 years, and no one suggested that 100% of our feeling and experience came from this power of thought, this power that keeps generating mental activity that as soon as we think it, we feel it. That turned out to be one of the most simple secrets I had ever come across. It did more to straighten me out psychologically than anything else I had learned. And it wasn't a technique. It was just beginning to realize where my feelings were coming from. So I did a lot of worrying. That was one of the ways I was insecure. I'd think about things in a way that would make me anxious. So I suffered from a lot of anxiety. And I can remember after the very first training I went to after I read this book that talked about this, a couple of nights later in the hotel room where I was staying, I started to see myself thinking about something that wasn't going to happen for another week. And the more I thought about it, the more anxious I got. But for the first time, I woke up to the fact that I was thinking up my anxiety. And I had never done this before. I just stopped thinking about what I was thinking about, and the anxiety went away. And I kept doing that over and again. I kept catching myself. It's sort of like I was seeing how, like if I got angry, it's just me thinking angry thoughts. And I would catch myself being angry and let that thinking go. And I was catching myself all over the place. I had wall-to-wall thinking that generated insecurity and anxiety and upset. And I'm going, oh my God, I wish I had learned this when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish I had learned this one simple thing while I was in school. It would have helped me get over my insecurity very quickly. I got very excited about this. I said, I looked around and I could see people all around me thinking about things in a way that made them anxious, upset, confused, you name it. Irritated, annoyed, bothered, frustrated, impatient. Normal human beings, there's nothing wrong with any of these feelings. And I wasn't so much trying to get rid of the fact that I had those feelings or stop that from happening, because I can't stop thoughts from coming into my head. But when I understood it, I'd get over my upset very quickly. It's what in psychology they call being resilient. You bounce back quickly when you're upset. And you can sort of look at somebody, and when they get upset, or bored or bothered or impatient, or how quickly do they get over it? And I started seeing almost everybody I looked at, no matter what age, when they weren't feeling good, when they were stressed or upset, they would think harder about something in their life. And that thinking innocently kept feeding that feeling and keeping it alive. And I didn't see many people, especially adults, but teenagers, from teenagers up, when people would get upset, I wouldn't see them waking up out of that thinking, coming back to the now. And that thought and feeling would just flow through naturally and get over it quickly. And you'd get right back to clarity and perspective and better feeling. So that was one secret that knocked my socks off. To this day, I mean, it's been 30 something years since I learned that. I was 40 when I learned it. It took me a long time to get over. I wish I had known this before I turned 40. I really wish I had learned this. But then I started seeing that I could pass on this simple secret to my kids. And after a while, it sunk in. And once it sunk in for them, they changed. My daughter changed so much when she realized that it was her own thinking creating her feelings. She went from being an extremely emotional 14-year-old girl, very sensitive, very emotional, taking everything personally, always getting upset about things, to being like a 40-year-old poised, confident woman overnight. And every one of our friends saw her posture changed, her feeling changed. It's sort of like, bring it on. Anything I feel doesn't frighten me anymore. It's just passing thought. And if I leave it alone, it goes through really quickly. One time she came up to me and said, Dad, I got upset with somebody and I wanted to stay upset, but I couldn't. I knew I was just doing it to myself. Why would I keep thinking about this if it just keeps me feeling horrible? Why would I do that? It would be like if somebody came up to my daughter and hit her with a baseball bat, dropped the bat and ran away. And she bent over and picked it up and then kept hitting herself on the head with angry thinking for the next 3 hours, which is what she would have done. It's what I did. It's what I see most people doing innocently. They just haven't learned where feelings really come from. It's very empowering. I've worked with a lot of teenagers, and it's very empowering to see teenagers catch on to this. It can change their life very quickly. It can help them learn a secret that most adults don't know very well. It can help kids begin to feel empowered. Well, really anybody, but when I've worked with teenagers, which I've done a lot because my heart was always into education and kids and helping kids and my own kids and now my grandkids. Listen, my grandkids are young, 2 and 10 and 14. Well, the 10-year-old and the 14-year-old, I say to my 14-year-old grandson, has this helped you learning that thought creates your experience? He says, oh my gosh, Poppy, it's just made my life so easy. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, when I first learned this, my first thought was, it can't be that easy. And then the more I started to see that that was true, I started saying, oh my gosh, it is this easy. If you don't know that thinking creates your feelings, you're going to blame your feelings on somebody else or on a situation. That complicates life terribly. It makes you feel like the world has the power to make you feel bad. And you have to be very careful or the world will upset you or stress you. It's very disempowering. It leaves people feeling like a victim of the world. As soon as people begin to see it doesn't work from the outside in, it works the other way around. Whatever I think, I feel. I'm like everybody else. Nobody's different. This is true for every human being on this planet. And I found that out to be true in the last 35 years. It's the same for everybody, right? So that was the first secret. And that I learned that I still think it's a revolutionary, it's one of the most important discoveries that's ever happened, not just in the field of psychology, but for humanity. I've seen it reduce violence in any part of society, in kids, in prisons, in communities. It's reduced the need that people have to use drugs and alcohol, which is just people doing so much negative thinking that they feel bad all the time. So then they look for something in the world that when they do it, they feel better. They don't understand that if I know it's thought and drop those thoughts, I'm going to feel better and there won't be any price to pay. There won't be a hangover. There won't be all the horrible things I said or did that I did when I was drinking or smoking or whatever.
And I won't be in prison, maybe.
Yes. Well, I know that's true because I've trained people that work in prisons and I've gone into prisons. It's very powerful to see people who have lived a life being unhappy or upset, learn this one secret, begin to drop all of the upsetting thoughts when they show up. And the beautiful thing about human beings is when we drop thinking that weighs heavily on us or upsets us, it's built into us to feel good. It's natural. We all feel good when our head clears of thinking that makes us unhappy or upset. It's our default setting to feel good. So but people have to discover this for themselves. They have to see that if they're thinking about something in a way that creates stress or tension or upset or confusion or boredom, or people have to see when I realize that it's my own thinking creating this feeling, that when I fall away from that thinking, it's built into me to feel better. And when I feel better, I can deal with anything better. I can play sports better. It's called being in the zone. I can enjoy relationships and have a really nice relationship with a person. Right? If I'm always thinking up unhappiness and blaming it on the other person, it makes it very hard to have a good relationship. I think that's why the divorce rate has been so high, certainly in the United States. So I've worked with lots of people in relationships where things weren't going well, where this has been helpful. And even if they do get divorced, they do it in a very different way. And they're much friendlier and kinder toward each other afterwards, really become very loving toward each other afterwards. So there's no downside for any of us living in well-being more of the time. So that's one secret. I have another one. Shall we pause at this point? I only have two.
I'll just have a look and see if there's any. No, it's just Marnik said hello, but no other comments or questions. Anyone else
Okay.
would like to ask
any questions about this part? This would be a good place if there's, I mean, it's so unbelievably simple as you start to see it. See if anybody has any questions about this.
Everyone's just taking it in, I think, at the minute.
They're on bated breath, waiting for the second.
The second, I've been ever since you kept saying, this is the first secret, and I was like, there's another one. There's another one. Doesn't seem like we have any. Am I looking in the right place? Let me just check. And also, if you want to, here we go. Someone has raised their hand. Let me have a look and see if I can work out who it is on this.
Yeah, can you
oh, it's Monique, yeah. So Monique, would you like to come on and ask a question, or would you like to type it in? We can let you come on. Ooh. If you...
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I don't think my camera's working, but
oh, okay.
Can you hear me? I just actually, it's so funny. I just posted a question on Facebook asking about some resources for teenagers, because I just had a conversation with a coworker who has a 19-year-old daughter who's in her first year of college, and she is so caught up in the drama of friends and boyfriends and what everyone thinks of her, and she's distraught and crying every night, and they're looking for a therapist for her and all this stuff. And I was kind of, you know, giving a little explanation about this understanding to the mom, and actually her response was, yes, that's very rational and everything, but my daughter is far from rational right now.
Oops, I've done something wrong there, sorry. Don't know how I've done that. Oh no, here she is. There she is.
Oh, you can see me now. Okay. Were you able to hear all that?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're just looking for resources for a young adult or teenager for this understanding. It's like a book or something that she could read that she might be able to. It would be appropriate for that age group. And I heard Dicken talk about helping young people, and so I thought I would inquire.
Perhaps you could listen to this video.
I can see if she would be interested in that. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, there's so many good videos out, but I'm going to suggest 3 different things that come to mind off the top of my head.
Okay.
There's a booklet called The Spark Inside. It was written for teenagers by Amy Chen Mills.
Okay.
And you can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
There's a book called The Relationship Handbook.
Oh yeah, I've got that one.
By George Pransky. I've had teenagers who have really liked that, because often teenagers are really concerned about relationships, and but it's just very down to earth and practical. And I mean, my teacher was Sid Banks, and the book Enlightened Gardener is a book. I've been surprised by how often people respond to that or hear something in that, because he was such a clear, simple teacher.
Yeah.
So that's another possibility. There's a whole series of books called, I'll show you. These are for younger kids, but I love them.
Oh, yes.
My My Guide Inside. Okay.
Called My Guide Inside, and it's by Krista Campsell and Kathy Marshall Emerson.
Okay.
And Krista has already been to speak on one of these videos, so there's a video by her also, which will be available.
Oh,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Hmm.
Mara
Yeah.
Gleason, one thought changes everything.
Mhm.
I mean, there's lots of things that I found out that we don't have to, that teenagers really can respond to or do respond to.
Mhm.
But it helps if they read something and then have someone they can just ask their questions to.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Someone who can make it really simple.
Yeah. Yeah. She just gets so she gets really caught up in how her friends are seeing things, and she'll see it one way and her friends will see it another way, and she feels like it doesn't matter how she sees it, everyone else is seeing it differently, and so that's creating all the distress and the discord. Yeah. And she recently broke up with her boyfriend. I think it was her first real boyfriend, and he was devastated and called her practically suicidal and all these things, and it really, really upset her, and she just didn't know how to deal with it. And so, yeah, she just really got caught up in a lot of that.
Yeah. Very easy,
yeah.
What we've been talking about, Monique, about most people don't realize their strong emotions have nothing to do with differences or how other people see things or what other people say, that
Yeah.
our feelings don't come from the outside, and that misunderstanding can lead to an enormous amount of suffering in people. And as soon as they begin to consider that feelings only come from one place, from thought,
Mhm.
it can help people almost immediately, because they stop feeling like they're sort of a victim of circumstance.
That's exactly, yeah.
And they begin to see that it's normal to have these feelings, but if we don't know where they come from, they stick around for a long time because we think into them and keep feeding them innocent.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was so good at that.
Mhm.
Every time
And I think that she thinks that she needs to solve it. She needs to solve it somehow.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about, that's my second secret. So I'm going to talk about that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for helping me with these resources, and I will pass them along. Thank you.
And that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
My grandson, who's 14, loves the videos.
And one more thing is that there will be, as part of this series, there will be some young people coming on with their parents or with other people who are going to talk about their experience and how it's changed their lives. So that might be interesting for her to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Second secret. I'm going to use this phrase, that the second secret is that we all have a guide inside. With adults, I call it wisdom. With kids, I call it a guide or common sense. Same thing. But I didn't know that inside me was all the wisdom I needed to make really good decisions. But the problem is we can't think our way to wisdom. It's only when our minds are relaxed and open does wisdom show itself to us. Okay, so here's an example. I'm caught up in thinking about something and I'm really worried and I'm trying to figure it out. In other words, I'm trying to analyze my way toward a wise answer. But when I'm upset and analyzing, it keeps the upset in place, so I can never feel good enough to even access my own common sense, because common sense shows up in any person as they feel better. It comes with a good feeling. So if we're not feeling good, we can't think our way to common sense, because common sense is a new thought that pops into our mind when it's open and free. And it's happened to us all our life. Everybody has common sense. It's just so funny that when we most need it, we start trying to think our way to it. And it's an impossibility. No one can do it. It's impossible to do. It doesn't work that way. Here's an example for kids. If you're on a laptop computer, you can get lots of cool things. You can get games. You can Google anything, information. You'll get all kinds of information, but you won't be able to get happiness out of the computer. You won't find it there. You won't be able to get new thinking that's completely new, that's not stored in the computer, that's completely fresh. Common sense is new thinking. It doesn't come from the computer. I have to close the laptop of my mind by stop thinking about things, come back into the now and rest, and then I start to feel better. And when I feel better, automatically I start getting more common sense. In other words, when my mind clears, I start to feel better. When I feel better, I know better what to do. And it's always worked that way. People don't make their best decisions when they're caught up in their thinking and upset. No one makes good decisions then. People make really good decisions all the time when their head is clear and they go, oh, I know what I should do. Oh, this feels right. Oh, I should just do this. That's common sense. That's a new thought breaking in once the old thoughts are cleared out of our mind. As soon as our minds are clear, there's room for wisdom to break through. Okay, my favorite metaphor is when we're caught up in our thinking, that's like the clouds on a cloudy day or a stormy day. When we wake up to thought, it's like we discover that behind the clouds is blue sky, clear mind, wide open, the now, present moment. And when anybody is standing in the blue sky, they suddenly realize that the sun is there shining, and the sun brings warmth and nourishment. It brings warm feelings or feelings that uplift, and it brings nourishment, which is new thinking, common sense that's helpful. That's why we say that everybody has a guide inside, but nobody listens for it very often, especially when they need it. So when I get upset, which happens, is normal, we get thoughts that create frustration or upset or stress. That feeling now is very helpful. It's very friendly. Thank God I feel those feelings. It's like an alarm clock going off saying, close the laptop. Step away from your thinking. Get your hands in the air. Don't touch that thinking anymore. Take your hands off the keyboard, right? Come back to the now. And when we rest in the now, that old thinking will begin to fall away naturally. No technique, it just falls away naturally. And as it falls away, we start feeling better. And when we feel better, we'll find our answers. When we feel better, it's almost like the feeling itself is our guide, right? If I listen for this feeling, when my mind empties, I'm going to fill up with this feeling of well-being. I just start feeling better. Let's just call it that. We all have built into us to feel better. When our head's clear, we feel better. And when I feel better, I have way more perspective on things. It's way easier to make decisions. Now, as a kid, I would get really upset and then make decisions while I was upset. And so I kept getting into trouble because they were horrible decisions. And then I learned this, and I'm 40 years old, and finally I'm catching on. I'm going, oh, we make our best decisions when our head is clear and we feel good, and we make our worst decisions when we're stressed or upset, trying to figure it out. I couldn't believe it. And again, now I'm going, how can it be that simple? When I first learned, how can it be this simple? That if I know that my thinking creates my feelings, I'll fall out of my thinking more often, more quickly. And as I do, without working on anything, without any technique, I'll start to feel better. And when I feel better, this guide will guide me. That feeling will guide me through my difficult circumstances and through my life. I'll just have my own common sense. So when I work with teenagers, if they learn how to listen for and trust and follow their own common sense, rather than their upset, impulsive thinking, they will become very mature, very wise, very savvy, very street smart. They'll make good decisions in difficult circumstances. And I've seen it again and again and again and again. So you put the two secrets together, and it's a home run for people. Beginning to wake up out of thinking that obscures our inner guide, our inner common sense, and make room for that inner light to shine through and bring us feelings that lift our spirits, make us feel better, and then thinking that helps guide us. Just, oh, this makes sense. This is what I need to do. This feels right. I was thrilled when my kids learned that. My goal was that they'd learn these two secrets before they left home. And I knew if they knew these two things, they would do really well as adults. They would not. When my son was 17 years old, we're driving around in the car, and he was really catching on to this. We can wake up out of thinking that makes us upset. He was getting very resilient, and he was learning to trust his own common sense more and more. And he says to me, we're driving around the car, and suddenly he says, Dad, my friends don't know how easy life can be. I say, what do you mean? He says, well, you know how quickly I get over my upset. My friends think there's something wrong with me. They think that I have to stay upset to show people how upset this made me. He says, but they tell me because I get over my upset very quickly that I must be lazy or I don't care. Because if I really cared, I'd stay upset, and I'd get more and more upset, and then I'd go take care of business while I was upset, which my friends do. They get enraged, and then they go try and deal with somebody. And he says, now I do the opposite. I get upset, I get over it, I feel better, I get my common sense, and then I go take care of business. He says, it's not like I don't take care of business. It's not like I avoid dealing with stuff, but I do it from a completely different place that my friends do it. And they're struggling and having difficulty and always upset, and I'm not. So it's pretty ironic that they think there's something wrong with me and that I should be more like them. You see.
So you mean I've got to change the name of this now then to The Secrets of Everything? instead of the secret of
I
everything.
had trouble narrowing it down to just one, and for me to narrow it down to two is pretty good, let me tell you. But these are the two. These are the two things I wanted my kids to know before they left home. And boy, has it made a difference. They've led really good lives. They have wonderful spouses and kids, and they're wonderful parents. And this continues to help them every day as parents, because they get upset like anybody else. But if they know it's just low quality thinking and they don't act on it, it doesn't create any problem. And they'll just wait until their head clears, sometimes seconds, sometimes a minute. And that's all it takes to begin to get common sense again. And common sense, sometimes you're still upset, but now you have a little common sense. So instead of yelling and screaming at someone, you walk into the other room for a minute and then come back as soon as you settle down. That's common sense. That's common sense. When I learned this at 40 as a parent with a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old, I just stopped fighting and arguing with my kids. I still had those feelings, but I would wait a little bit until I had a good feeling in my common sense, or I'd at least wait until I had common sense. Even if I was still in a low mood, you can gain common sense in a low mood, right? Then you can still be kind when you're in a low mood. It's not like we have to wait until we're always feeling wonderful. We can still be kind in a low mood. All we have to do is take responsibility for our experience instead of blame it, and listen for that little feeling voice inside that guides us. So I wish that for everybody, Ann. I really do. I wish it for every single human being. Is these two secrets. I call them secrets, not because they're secret, but people have to discover for themselves. A person has to discover for themselves that they're a thinker and that it really is true, that every thought we have creates a feeling, and that's where our feelings come from. And as our thinking changes, our feelings will change. People have to see that for themselves. They have to realize that for themselves. And people have to begin to realize that when our heads clear, we do have wisdom available to us. The same wisdom that's available to any human being. No one has more access to wisdom. It's just whether we listen to it or not. Still there. The sun is still there for everybody, right? So it's the same wisdom as when I say it's within everybody. I mean, everybody has. It's already.
That's a different thing from intelligence.
It's a different kind of intelligence. For a long time, we thought IQ was what determined a person's intelligence. Now, even at universities like Harvard, they say IQ is a poor measure of how life intelligent someone is, because you can have a very high IQ and not listen to or access your common sense. All right. And without common sense, which is a deeper kind of knowing or intelligence, it's hard to deal with life and relationships and difficult circumstance.
I can't see that there's any other questions just yet. If there's anyone else would like to ask a question, you can type into the chat box or you can raise your hand. And in the meantime, there was something that came to me, Dicken, which was, I wonder if children and teenagers who have this understanding, who start to get this understanding, might have any struggles at school with teachers, for example, because I remember at school we were taught that thinking was very important, and that we should think more, not think less.
Yes. Well, we need to think more with the kind of thinking that pops into our mind when we're not using our mind the other way.
Mm.
So we're still wanting to access thinking, but we want to access a higher order of thinking, a wiser thinking. And everybody has wise thinking. All great scientific discoveries have come to people in a moment when they're reflecting on a problem or not even thinking about it, and then a new thought, an insight comes in. So we want people to think insightfully. So if we just say, it's not really that you want to think less, is that you want to do less thinking that's not helpful. You want to do more thinking that's helpful. You want to learn how to use your mind wisely. And as soon as we feel tension or stress, it's letting us know we're not using our mind very wisely. We need to let go of computer thinking so that this deeper wisdom thinking can emerge and guide us and help us. And we want much more of that kind of thinking. So we're not necessarily just looking for less thinking, we're looking for a higher quality of thought, right? Where low quality thought is normal, but it's like you eat good food, and then when it sits around for a while, it starts to smell, and it's garbage. And we've learned that it's healthier if you eat good food than if you eat garbage. And psychologically, people are eating garbage thoughts all over the place. And I didn't know that when I'm stressed and angry, it's normal to have garbage, but you don't want to eat it. So when I feel upset or stressed, I don't want to pay attention to that thinking and keep thinking about it. I want to let it flow through. That's putting the garbage in the trash. And then it clears, and then you get another round of healthy thinking. So we want more healthy thinking and less garbage thinking, which if you consume it and act on it, it makes you sick.
Yeah. So, is there anyone out there who would like to wait, maybe there is. Yes.
Someone has a chat there.
Yes, from AMC to all panelists. What are some tips or ideas for helping others see these insights? Simply talking about it and sharing what you know? They're suggesting that that's, oops.
Well, I learned about this from someone who was sharing what they knew and then telling stories. And then pretty soon with my clients and my family, sharing my own insights, not what somebody else said, but my own insights that were helpful. And then telling stories that demonstrated how helpful it was. And I think that way of learning is the oldest way of learning. It's been around forever. I mean, people would sit around the fire at night and tell stories. And some of the stories would be teaching stories. So really listening to people and then sharing what we know from our own insights is very ordinary, and it's extremely helpful. Mm-hmm. Like with our grandkids, we share little tidbits. We don't teach them. It's what I call planting seeds. Just once in a while, like they'll say, oh, I was so upset the other day, and I said, yeah, that's normal. We all have upset thinking. That's a seed. I'm not trying to teach it. I don't say, do you understand it? Shall we go over this? I'm going to give you a test in a minute. I expect you to know this. It's just planting a little seed. And we do this with our friends, don't we? I mean, it's as simple as if you go to the Grand Canyon and you come back and you see a friend, you tell a story. And if you had any interesting stories, you say, oh, listen to this. You know, there was a bear by the side of the road, and everybody had stopped their cars and they kept running up closer and closer to take pictures. And I'm going, oh my God, this is not going to end well. And then the bear started charging after somebody, and the person dropped their camera, and the bear picked it up and started stomping on the camera. This happened in Yellowstone Park. And boy, I've learned to keep my distance from wild animals, as we can't forget that they're wild animals. Now, that's just a little example of how we do this all the time. We do it as parents. We share stories with other parents all the time. It's ordinary. When I learned these principles, that my teacher, Sid Banks, said, just go be ordinary and only share what you know. Because that's old as the hills. That's been around since people started communicating. It's ordinary. We do it with friends all the time. It's no different. My work with people is no different than I listen, I hear their story, I wait, see what new and fresh occurs to me, and then I share that with them. It's just very ordinary. I made the bad mistake when I first learned this to think I should just run up to my kids when they were in a low mood and try and teach them what I was learning. Right? And they put up with it for about 2 weeks. And finally, they came to me together and said they had been talking, and they've decided that if I say one more word about thought or mood, they were going to run away. And they would have. My 14-year-old daughter at that point was very stubborn and strong-headed, and I could see her running away. So I said, I'm very sorry. And I said, I promise you, I won't say a word about this unless you ask me. And I didn't for 6 months. But I had to live it. And they saw me becoming more present, more kind, more loving, more open. I stopped bringing my garbage thinking and dumping it all over them, expecting to get good results. Right? And they noticed it after a while, and they started saying, you know, you and mom are different than the parents of our friends who all the time are arguing and yelling, and you guys don't even do that anymore. And then they wanted to know what I knew. And then they were all ears. And then my daughter had her massive insight. Right? And my son was like me, just gradually picked up on this over time. Just lots of seeds. But my wife and I learned not to preach, just to share. No judgment, no expectations, no agenda. It's just a beautiful human thing. Share what you know. You do it with friends, so it's a friendly gesture. Listen, connect, share, listen, connect, share. That's what it is to be human. And AMC said, that's what I do, just share what I know. Wonderful. That is how truth is communicated, and that's always been how truth is communicated. in an ordinary way by ordinary people sharing what they know. I tried to share what my teachers were teaching, and it was horrible. I made a horrible George Pransky. I made a horrible Sid Banks. I tried. And when I gave that up and just got ordinary and became just Dicken.bettinger and shared my story and what I was seeing, it seemed to help you. And that was a good lesson. Really good lesson.
And thank you very much, Dicken. That's been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Really, really. And
really great being with you and talking about this. And I hope at some point a bunch of teens are able to see this. And
yeah,
my heart really goes out to what it's like to be a teenager, especially these days. And boy, it's wonderful they can learn something that's so simple but so powerful.
thank you all for being here. And thank you so much, Dicken. It's been really brilliant. And
thanks to everybody who showed up. I was thrilled to see the list of people. We can see who's here, so that's really nice.
it is.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Bye,
Thanks very much. See you again.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.